Welcome back from the break. Today we have two guests, like I told you. One is what they call, I don't know where that started from, old Nollywood, and one is young Nollywood. Although the old Nollywood, like 1 2 years ago, did a fantastic movie that was acquired by Netflix as a Netflix original. But before this, one of the things where whenever you mention Nollywood, you cannot but just mention his name because his film Living in Bondage was the one that brought out Nollywood out of bondage, so to say. Because after the movie came out, a lot of people now try to do anything. I have a lot of questions to ask, and I'll allow Baron to allow me to ask some of those questions. One of the first questions was this. I don't want us to go into the controversy of who made the first movie, who did this, because if you start that, 3 hours we won't start. But I will ask you this. In one of those my interviews, Zig Zulu actually said that he was the one that wrote Living in Bondage. He was the first person that wrote the first script of Living in Bondage and gave to the executive producer before it was changed. I forgot what he called the name of the movie. You understand? I want your opinion about this.
Well, I wouldn't know whether Zigzuru wrote the first script or not. By the time I met Kenneth Nebo from the streets, he didn't tell me there was somebody else who brought a story called Living in Bondage. It may have been another story, but I know is that I made Living in Bondage with Kenneth Nebo.
Did you write it or you just produced?
The story of Living in Bondage is actually a very touchy one because I briefly worked with Power Mike Promotions where I had an encounter with this occult group before Power Mike relocated to Neni. Okay. It was that when Power Mike now left Lagos to Neni, most of us working with him were left without a job. So we were back to the streets. That's where my hawking started. So within that period, for about 4 years without any job, I was thinking of how can I get some money to tell the story that someday somebody came to my office, Power Mike's office, we were the media angle, to hire us to come and record a group of people at the hockey pitch at the National Stadium. Just Power Mike's office was just Alhaji Masha, 70 Alhaji Masha then. So it was a stone throw, and we did. But it turned out that what we recorded, we thought was a cultural festival, was actually it's not an initiation ceremony, but it was just a celebration of one of them that did well. So you saw the mighty and the low, all of them there, in their regalia that I replicated in Living in Bondage. So that was an experience. So that was one of the things I went to discuss with Kenneth Nebo. He too said, this is something that will really be done, but he was afraid that it will backlash. And a lot of us, most of us will be into problem. But I said to him that somebody who has been on the street for 4 years, a man who is down, what other fall am I actually looking for? So I said to him, let the backlash be on me. So we put our heads together. Now, don't forget that the script of Living in Bondage was what you call today sequence outlines. They were not written as a full-fledged script where every dialogue was written. Okay. It was the sequence outline of what will happen all through the film because it was an experimental thing that we were trying to do. Of course, in those days, that's how Yoruba films were also written. Nobody writes a full script that time and say, except for when I was now doing my second film called Circle of Doom that I now wrote because that was a script I brought from school, from Jos, where I schooled. But for Living in Bondage, and remember, we're going to do it in Igbo. So who will sit down to pen Igbo language in that volume of 6-hour production? So it was difficult. So what we did was to do situation, sequence outline, and then we hired artists who then we rehearsed them, telling them what we wanted, and then letting them speak, interpret those roles according to their the words. Because I had a lot of people from the East. Asaba was there, some Delta people who didn't really speak the type of Igbo we spoke. Some Enugu people were there, some Imos were there, Aba, different groups. So it was a potpourri of Igbo language that we put together, and that was why it resonated with a lot of people. So I wouldn't say we had a full-fledged script. But what we had was an idea that two of us sat down together and crafted in such a way. That's why if you go to anywhere, you will see that the credit for writing was given to two of us, because he's already in the market. He knows what the people will also want. But I have an idea of what I think I wanted to tell the world, which a lot of people didn't want to talk about at that time. Yet it was rumored everywhere. So that's how the script came. And then we did the story. And the rest, they say, is history.
I don't know about Baron, but I have two more questions on
Please
Living
do.
in Bondage before we move to the next phase. The first one is this. Was there a backlash after that? Well, the people that you were trying to tell their story, did anyone get in touch? Did you understand? And then the second aspect of the story is that 20 years after, a new Living in Bondage was done, and you were completely not involved in it. You understand? I want to find out, were you compensated? Were you contacted because it was a huge success?
Okay, I'll check on the first one, and I'll say yes, there was a lot of backlash. The moment I made that film, because what we said in the film was real, and the situations we painted was almost near real, people believed, in fact, fans didn't actually believe that we were acting it. Some people believed it was actually an initiation ceremony or a sacrifice ceremony, that we were caught off guard, recorded without our knowledge. And so people, individuals, didn't like us for doing that, especially for someone like Merit, who is actually an epitome of what a woman should be like, killed in the sacrifice. So it was painful to everybody. Now, but they all called themselves. I had 13 occult groups write letters to me. And I'm not going to, yes. Until recently, when I decided that let's burn this, the letters were with me for a long time. Anyway, I went to interviews, I went with it, and the letters were actually condemnation letters.
Wow.
Some said I won't cross Benin. Some say, different things. If today we say about, people will be panicking and saying, because of course now you have a lot of calls that have faces. In those days there were no faces. People would just write. I would just come to my place one day. I just see where they placed a letter with all the things, all the abuse and all the curses, and they will place on themselves. And which is why when I now did the Pretty Serpent a few years later and had a lot, the accident that I had that really wrecked my Mercedes-Benz, and people didn't think I was going to come out. But I came out. The vehicle was smashed to smithereens. The only thing remaining was the axle. But I came out from the vehicle. Not that I wasn't scattered. Of course, I broke my leg. I stayed in the hospital for about a few weeks. But people thought I would have died. So the news went out that the backlash has already caught up with me because the causes were now real. But here am I today, still talking about an industry. So, so the second one, yes. I was working on Amina when they were shooting Living in Bondage. And let me say this. The controversy between me and Kenneth Nebu about who owns Living in Bondage or who doesn't own it has been on a long haul. From even 1993, 92. But my father said to me something, he said, that guy gave you a break. He gave you money when you were on the streets to make a film. He financed the film, an idea that I didn't have money to give you because my father was a teacher. And there was nobody who could actually lend me any money, which was why I stayed on the streets for 4 years, thinking I could hawk to raise money to make that film. So if somebody now made you what you are today, why should you begin to fight about whether who owns the right and who owns it? I mean, anything I'm going to do about that he won't be part of it. So I left that. So because when I did the film with Living with Kenneth Nebo, there was no agreement. There was no document anywhere. I mean, somebody was pregnant for an idea, something he wanted to do, and some other person has the resources, has the market backing, has the connections, everything. And we came together and developed something and turned it around to what it is today. We are not the one who is going to be asking someone who is investing of $150,000 at that time to give you an agreement when he didn't ask you for an agreement. He didn't say, if I give you this money and it didn't turn out, this and this and this will happen. Now you are the one collecting the money. You're not the one who is going to say this and this and this. So it was not feasible at that moment. So we let it. So when they now wanted to do a remake, what they did was to go to him. I was working in Jos for that number of years. I didn't even know that the remix was made until I finished shooting and came back to Jos, and I heard it. In fact, I went to a conference somewhere and I saw Ramsey Noah and I saw Steve Gukas. Steve was my classmate in Jos. So I told him, I said, I heard you people went for so and so thing. What happened? Why didn't you come to even to tell me? And he said a lot and all that. So I don't want to talk about that. But I now reached out to the man who bought the rights, and I told him, I said, I can actually stop this production from taking place, from even being released. He said yes. He said I should come to see him. I didn't go to see him, but he called and called. I don't want to say whether he compensated me, but there were things we discussed, and which is one of the reasons why you will also see that NECA Part 2, the NECA remake was also made. So, we had some mutual agreement which dovetailed into the making of NECA and all the rest. So far, so good.
So, for me, I wanted to know, because, after you made Living in Bondage with Kenneth Nebue, it was big, everybody knew there was something big in Nigeria. Like you rightly said, it resonated across the nation. It wasn't even in the eastern part, it was across the nation. It was scary at some point for the children. Even some adults felt and I guess it was because it was something that was a rumor that we could now see literally happening. Then you did a couple of other films with Nneka the Pretty Serpent. But after a while, you just went low. What happened? Why did it take you that long, before you now came back?
Well, my people say that somebody, there's no way I can interpret this in English. Somebody who is inside if you find yourself in a pit that you can't come out from, if you try to dig yourself out of that place, you dig yourself inside. By the time I finished Living in Bondage, did NECA, did Circle of Doom. Of course, Circle of Doom was before NECA. And I did Brotherhood of Darkness. I had a series of controversies because I didn't have money. And this was just one street boy without any business understanding of how things run. And these guys in the market were the moguls so ab initio, from the moment you want to deal with them, they already know where to put some stumbling blocks to take over your production, and then you just left. If I tell you all those films that I didn't make money, it would look like rehashing something that you already know.
When you say you don't make money, you didn't make money, is it that I understand that back then there were no contractual agreements and all that and all
I even had for Circle of Doom, and I had, because of what happened in Brotherhood of Living in Bondage, I had for Circle of Doom, I had for Nneka the Pretty Serpent.
So how come you didn't make any
money? I had for Brotherhood of Darkness.
So how come you didn't make money?
Because these financiers those days were the producers, the marketers.
Yes.
Now, so let's just paint a scenario. So you give me money to make a film, for instance, or I make a film because I borrow money to make a film, and I give it to, say, Mr. Bond in the market. So I give him an arrangement, an agreement to sell 10,000 or 100,000 cassettes for me. Okay. And I go to maybe Okey Ogunjiofor and I buy the 10,000 cassettes or have an arrangement with them, and they supply it to me. Okay. I print my packets, mass produce, give you, because they own the mass production, they mass produce the tapes, and I give them the packets and we sign. Okay. So they take one of your films, make a master out of it, because they're the ones copying your film, yes, and copy thousands of it and print your packet and pack your own in the store. Anytime you come, you count your film, it will be complete. Oh. And then they are selling your film.
Yet they are telling
and
you.
There's no, how do you regulate that they're selling or they are not selling? And if you have sponsors, for instance, I have a few people who sponsored one of the two of my films or thereabout, and they are the ones working with those marketers to sell this film. They finished at the end of it all, and you're begging for the account, and you can't see it. Mm. So why should I then remain producing films, all hits, without making any money? Up to today, some of those monies have not come. And if I tell you how much we made in those films, you'll be amazed. For instance, in Living in Bondage, the first 1 month of its release, we made 20 million naira worth of goods sold.
Wow.
In 1 month.
Back then.
And I won't want to talk about NECA, how much NECA gross 1 and 2. At least I can say that Circle of Doom, the guy was magnanimous enough to give me some money when I released that film. But I was stupid enough when that money was given to me to think that, since I gave him part 1 and part 2 and it brought this amount, somebody who's been in the pit for a long time, let me even get myself a house, buy a car. That was the message that got spoiled. And then the guy saw it immediately and said, Bill, I said, this guy don't arrive.
Wow.
So the other 50 to 100,000 packets of the first film and the second part of Circle of Doom, up to today, no account. Nick, I didn't render any account today.
At all.
At all. Living in Bondage was only 1.5 that I got. Okay, let me start 3.5 because 1.5 was on the day my logistics for production.
Okay.
And then 2,000 naira hospital bill because I edited that film in 7 days with my editors who were not Igbo people.
Okay.
So I must be there awake. One works in the daytime, one works in the night. So that the film must be released in 7 days after we shot it. And it was like somebody on drugs. So when I finished it, I broke down. I went to hospital. But I was squatting somewhere in Ajegule. Those people have already seen that I'm working. And so they couldn't come to pay my bill. So I reached out to my Oga, said, he sent me 2,000 naira that I signed as an IOU. Add it to the 1.5 I got as my logistics. That's 3.5. That's all I got from Living in Bondage today.
IOU, that means to be removed from
of course now. Yes. So when I was not saying, okay, fine, let us even make accounts so that we can know how much that came in and what belongs to me and all that. Without, it was this way, like that, this and that, and this and that, till I now said, no. That's how I moved on to do Circle of Doom. Got another person, I was cheated, I continued, but I don't want to keep talking. That's why if it's not Mr. Bond's invitation, I can't come because I know we'll be talking about these old things. And they're not really, it doesn't impress me. It makes me feel stupid.
I understand how you feel. So let's move away from there. Let's just ask the last question from Living in Bondage Saga. And the question is this, and that has intrigued me a lot. How was the talent Kenneth Okonkwo discovered?
When I was planning to do Living in Bondage, I said I was on the streets. So, but I always resume at the National Theatre every evening to go and watch because my pastor then told me that I shouldn't lose touch with my industry. If I'm planning to make money, raise money to make a film, I have to be going to the National Theatre to at least network with other people. So every evening I go there. And then I see other people rehearsing. I keep my ways and watch. So one day, Frank Vaughan and co were rehearsing a TV production called a TV pilot called Vices. So I took the light. I was watching them, and some mistakes were made. All these things are in the public domain, and I corrected them. That was when they saw that this guy knew this. So they asked me to, what did they do wrong? I mentioned what they did wrong, and said, how do I correct it? And I told them. So you know this. Why are you doing this? And I said, I'm only hawking because I want to raise some money. So they said, okay, Kai, join us and help us and let's put this together. And we finished that job. That's where I got the referral from Rutos, who was on that set, who now gave me a letter to Kenneth Nebo. Something I've been looking for on the streets for a long time. But volunteering saved that situation for me. Now, so when I went to Kenneth and we started working on this script, of course, by the grace of God, I'm a very good actor, especially in my language. So when Kenneth saw the way I talked and the way, because Igbo is a flowery language with a lot of idioms, and I grew up well with elders, so I know it a lot. So we were now looking for who would play the lead role, Kenneth. But at that time, Kenneth was working at Osiequip, a furniture marketing firm in Apapa.
Okay.
And somebody, and because we're looking for those who can speak this language. There were few, Kanayo, Ngozi Wanete, a few of them who could speak Bob Marley Zoku, and a few. So it was difficult to find somebody who can play that role. And somebody gave us his contact, and we reached out to him. And he came. And then he was cast for the role. He was perfect for it. And I mean, two of us on the set, you will think the script has been written and rehearsed for years.
Okay.
And that's what happened.
Time goes very fast on radio. We have very limited time. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. And that 3 questions, you are going to please help us to answer in 1.5 minutes. Number 1 is Aminat. How did Amina come about? The second one is, what are we expecting? We've had Amina for, it's been on Netflix for about 2 years now. I know it took about 2 or 3 years to make the movie because it was a proper production and we saw all that went into it. You understand? So those are our last questions, sir.
The first thing about Amina is when I left production and went into TV, because I said if I wasn't going to be getting money from these marketers, I moved to television. And so I produced Rough Edges, Siberia, and Hope Avenue. They were running for years. So I now decided that I was going to do another story. But I recognized the fact that there's a dichotomy between the North and the South when it comes to film production. So I wanted to network that group so that we can increase and expand the ecosystem for everybody. So I decided to do a film in the North. I schooled in the North, so I knew a lot about Amina. So I set out to do the research for that film, and it took 19 years. While I was researching it, I was running my TV soap operas. And eventually, that film was made, and we have to build a set of the ancient Zazao. It took time and money to do that, and at the end of it all, but it paid off because Amina became the first film to make global top 10 in 190 countries around the world.
And that one was able to clean away all the tears of not being paid, because I know that Netflix pays well.
I'm not complaining.
My question has been answered already with that. Thank you so much for coming. I hope and know that you are one of those who a lot of young people need to learn for, and I hope and pray that apart from what you do, which I know you are a very quiet person, you just go quiet and then you come out with your job. I endure you to please write more for people to read, young people to read and learn from
I'm writing a book called The 4 Epochs of Nollywood.
All right. When is it coming out?
Very soon. But some already I will tell you about now, but leave that one.
All right. Thank you so much for coming. You understand? We hope that next time you come again on the program.
My pleasure.